So in this video, we're going to add a route to our backend web server so that when someone selects a different park, we're going to run a report in the background that basically grabs data for just that park and only that park. So there's a couple things we're going to do, I guess, is we're going to come in. This is my step 3, but you can continue on from step 2. And I'm going to come in here, and in my routes folder, I'm going to go to my index page, and I'm going to have a new route. And that route is going to use a lot of the things from the first query. I'm going to take a copy of that and paste it in. I'm going to get rid of this render index page line. Don't need that anymore. This is actually going to change to be equal to, of all things, session config. It's already on the session, so we can just grab it from there. No need to make the user enter their username and password in again. I'm going to do some cleanup here. Don't need that line. My other route. Now the route here is going to be different. It's going to be a report. So a post method on the report route. So that's when someone goes to this particular URL on our web server. This code will be triggered. Now the SQL is going to be different. It's going to be what's called a parameterized query. So I'm just going to grab that, and we'll have to change how we actually run the query to substitute in the parameter. The one thing is that we have to get the value that the user is going to send over in that. So we are going to console.log res.body just to make sure the data that the user sent came over. So this is very similar to this. Oh, I said res, it should be request. So request body.host. So this should be req request body. Now we're going to have I guess a chunk of data that we're looking for. We're just going to go body at the time right now. Just print that out to see what came over. So they're going to come in on the report route. We're going to get the connection information from the session. We're going to print out what they sent over, or request.body. In that, we're going to reuse that pool connection. We do have to change the query. So I'm going to go. So in the data files that we copied over earlier in SQL, there is this one here, get the park data. Open this up in Notepad. Slide this over so you can see it. Not that there has to be a space, but Control A, Control copy. That's the query you want to run. And we're going to replace the SQL for this one right here. Now because this is a parameterized query, it means we're going to drop a value in for $1. Because we typed it as text, it knows to put quotes around it in that. Now and where that's done is done on this SQL. So we're going to run this SQL and swap in all these parameters. We send in an array. We only have one. req request dot body dot what are they going to send? Now we're hoping they send something called park long lat. That's what we're hoping. But we're going to print it out up here just to make sure that that's the actual key coming over. And so what's going to be sent over is a lat long string, and we're going to use that to select a particular park. And on this, we're not going to render parks anymore. We're going to render our report pug. Let's go check out what they have in the report pug. Not much. It's going to be just send back JSON. And this not part at the beginning means don't mess with it. Just send it as is. Result, which means that key has to be called result, so we'll be okay there in that. And this is going to send an error but it's going to render our error PG page. So that's actually going to send back some HTML. Now, is that enough to test? Just to look it over. It looks, again, post, yes. Report, yes. Get the information from the session. Print out for debugging purposes what the heck they sent over. Make a new connection. Run this query. Before we query, swap in the parameters. If it's good, render the report page. If it's bad, render the error page. So that's enough to have a back-end route. We could have some bugs in here, or we can have some bugs on the front end. Now we got to get busy on the front end, and that's going to be up here in public in JavaScript here. So I got in here, we're going to use a fetch. So there's two things we're going to, well, it's a couple of things we're going to need. It's usually a URL and fetch options, so I'll go var, and I call this URL route, and it's going to be equal to /report, right? So that's how we tie this fetch is going to call back to that route, and that route's going to send us data. Now, there's a few things we're going to have to do. They usually call it fetch options. It doesn't have to be called this, but we'll call it that, fetch options. It's going to have a few things in it, and they will be, first, what is the method? Now, right now, I've got some issues going wrong. I got tabs and spaces, so I'm going to fix that real quick and convert indentation to spaces just to be consistent. And so one of the things is, what method are you going to call or send back to the server? Post is what we're going to call. In lecture, I mentioned that sometimes when you do these AJAX requests, you send like an HTML form. We're going to give them a heads up that we're actually going to be sending just raw JSON. We're actually not going to we're not basically sending a full-fledged HTML form. It's just going to be a little chunk of JSON that we're going to send back. So in the headers, watch the case on this one. We actually need to see in a little thing that'll have a key value pair. And the key is going to be content type. And the content type that we're sending is application /JSON. So we're not sending HTML to you, so it's not a traditional form that you need to chop up. We're going to send you raw JSON just to keep it clean, and then that would be the body of the document. And I think, no, should we do it all here? Maybe. I think I'm just gonna pop up here, and I'm gonna make a little variable called park data, and it's going to be equal to, again, a key value pair. And I'm going to keep the key value pair just synced right now. So the key name is going to be park long lat. The key thing here is that's going to have to match whatever I ask for here, right? This name right here, park long lat, it's going to have to eventually match this key. So that's where if you have problems, look there first. And this is the value that's going to be sent over, which is just basically the lat long string separated by a colon. The one trick to all this is that this is a JavaScript object, but we're sending JSON. So we have to convert that JavaScript object to JSON, but don't fear. JSON.stringify will take care of that. And we will put in park data. So we're going to convert this variable park data, which is this key value pair, from a JavaScript object to JSON. It's going to look very similar to this in text format. And then we need to basically start the fetch. So URL is really important, and the options are important. Are you posting? Are you getting some other method? How are we doing this? Traditional HTML, or in this case, not traditional HTML at all form. We're actually sending just raw application JSON. Just as a heads up to the web server, yo, I'm sending JSON to you, and this is the JSON I'm sending. at that. And then we start the fetch. So that's all like just setting up to do the fetch. And now we can go fetch. And what do you want to fetch? We want to fetch that URL. What do you do when something goes good? What do you do when something goes bad? Oh, better send over the fetch options to you when we do that. That would have been bad. Oh, it's not IntelliSense. There it is. Finally, it shows up. And this is a promise as well. So there's going to be a dot then, and then a dot catch kind of concept. And just to make this more readable, we'll put it on a separate line. Oops, put the dot back in. I'm going to fight with the IDE. There you go, dot then, dot catch. I'll put a little semicolon on the end, be safe. And that, anywhere else need a semicolon? Maybe there. That has one. We'll put one there. Yeah, we're good to go. So I'm just going to tighten this up in terms of white space and that. So take the park lat long, package it up as a JSON object, right? Set the route, set the method, give it a heads up that we're actually sending raw JSON, and the body is equal to the JSON, that park data being stringified from a JavaScript object to actual JSON. Now, if there's an error, we'll just go error, shoot that to the console. Yeah, I might as well set it to the console, or you can pop it up alert box. But I'm gonna go console. Log out the error. And that. And what would be a good thing to do? There's going to be a response. Now, technically, we should check the response to see if it is okay in that. But we're going to try to keep this short for the demo purposes. Oh, response.json. Now, this JSON is different. What happens here is we're going to send JSON over to do the query. It's going to send us data back. This JSON will turn that JSON that gets sent back into an actual JavaScript object. We're going to sneak in another promise, right? Another then to, if that response comes back and we can convert it to JSON, then I want to send it to another function to be processed. So we'll just call it data. That means we got some good data coming back, and we are going to send that to a function called update chart. Doesn't exist yet, will shortly. We're going to send update chart the data. Now I'm going to pop out of here. I'm going to Alt-Shift-F just to reformat things. I'm going to mark this brace as the end of park change. Okay, I'm going to start a new function here. It's going to be called, now you might notice that it did update chart. It's going to be sending some data. What's important here, you'll see this, is when this data hits at this point, it's going to be not JSON, but an actual JavaScript object. That's what response will do for us on this particular part here. And opening, closing brace. All I'm going to do here, should I write it to the console or pop it up in an alert box? Maybe I'll pop it in an alert box just so you can see the difference. Alert, and we will alert data. This will actually pop up the object, so it's not going to be readable form. We'll come back and change that later in that, but just so you can see that. So is this enough to test? We have a route, and we have some code that's going to hit that route, try to get data out of there. Now, really easy to have a small typo in here, especially these are case sensitive. This could be case sensitive. Could have a small typo in the specifier for what kind of type is coming over in that. So, but we're never going to know until we run it and test it. So let's get that happening in that. So let's fire up the server in that. And once it says localhost 3000, then we know it's ready to go. And hopefully that happens shortly. So it's ready. So I'll bring Chrome over and we will go to localhost 3000 / got our index page. I'm going to log in. Got our drop down list. And this is the thing here where what's going to happen. So I might just move this over so we can see the console here. So we're going to say, well, does it actually get sent over, right? In that. And that doesn't feel like anything happened at all, if I'm honest, in that. So let's go take a look, and we will inspect. And of course, we have some errors, so let's go take a look. Uncaught reference is require is not defined. Oh, this happens sometimes when I'm typing. It shoots a little line in for me. So I'm going to scroll up to the top. Yes, this happens consistently. It throws this line in somehow. I don't want that. Now, luckily, this is a front-end script in that, so I don't have to restart the server. I just got to go back to Chrome and go refresh. Slide this over in that. Oh, park change. That's easy enough. That just means that we need to reference our JavaScript file in that. So let's take a look. URL is undefined. Probably because it was URL route. It's a small one. There again, this is a change in the front end script, so no need to restart the server. Well, it didn't get an error. Object well, that felt like data came back. And we can see here that park long lat came back. So the longitude latitude is coming back. So I think we're looking good here. I'm just going to pop Chrome to the front. So we're going to make a small change. We're popping up the JavaScript object, and that's good. We'll need that later. But if we want to see what it actually looks like, we just have to change this a little bit, and we'll just quickly JSON stringify this thing, and then pop it out in the alert box, or you can write to the console. Writing to the console gives you a better way to inspect the object that gets printed out. So let's, that should be enough of a change. We're going to bring this back, do a little quick refresh. Feeling better, right? Park lot land came, long lat came back. Check this row count. If you see, like, if it's not 0, that's a good sign. That means you got some rows, right? So if you're getting 0 back, there's a typo somewhere. And probably the park long lat key has got a small typo in it in that. So it's got 2. I'm going to pick Alice Lake. That should have 1. There's Alice Lake, 1 row. If I pick Valhalla, it's got about 6 different vegetation types. 6, good. And you can see them all there. Engelmann spruce, interior cedar hemlock in that. Not sure about I'd have to look that up. But definitely getting vegetation back, definitely getting the areas back, which can be fed into a pie chart. So for this video, that's all we want to do, is want to get that fetch, get that new route in there, the report route, and get the fetch working from the client. So just to review, okay, so you do need a route. So we have a new route. If you're going to send data, we're sending the lat long back. Post makes most sense. If you've already got the username and password and put on the session, just grab it. No need for them to send a form. In that, always do some debugging, like logging out the console, to make sure you got data that you thought you're supposed to get. I'm reusing the pool connection. This is a parameterized query, so this $1 is going to get substituted in, right? And what we're substituting in is the lat long on the query. And if everything's good, our report gets rendered, and so the data coming back from the database, from Gamma in our case, is sent here to be sent back as raw JSON. And on the front side, or front end, we get the park lat long every time they change the selection in the drop-down list. We have a route to report. We have some fetch options. By the way, it's a post. By the way, this is special. It's just raw JSON coming at you. By the way, this is the JSON right here. The important part is to stringify it as you send it over. Then you initiate the fetch on that URL with those options. If it's good, you can get the response object to turn the data back into a JavaScript object, and then pass that JavaScript object onto another function for processing, which is what we're doing here. And if there's an error, you can then print that error to the console or pop up in the message. So that's all I want to show you in this video. That's all for now.